Hello and welcome. I am Megan McDonough. I am the founder of WellBeing Institute, and it's a gift to be here with you today. I invite you to take a nice deep breath in and a big exhale. Just taking one more deep breath, and this time really thinking about everybody else that's watching this video or being a part of this happiness fest, connected all around the world, breathing together. Take another deep breath in, big exhale. Welcome. So today when I speak about interconnected well-being, I really do believe that William James sums up my talk quite succinctly when he writes, "We are like islands in the sea, separate on the surface, but connected in the deep." That summarizes all of what I'm going to talk about today. You see, when it comes to our happiness and our well-being, sometimes we do think of ourselves as islands of our individual self and our pursuit of happiness. That this thing of well-being and happiness is a personal pursuit, that in a way it is a selving. And this actually is a very good thing, that we understand ourselves to have agency over our day, that we have the ability to shape ourselves towards the better, to shape this self towards using our strengths to what is enlivening, what is nourishing and good and wholesome. These are all very positive things in building a positive self-esteem, a positive sense of self. So it's worthwhile, isn't it? To really, as we mature and grow in wisdom, to think about ourself and our daily structuring of that self in a way that's supportive and nourishing and good. And there are times when this idea of our own self becomes too small to hold a bigger grief. And these last 2 years have been difficult with COVID, yes? And in many ways, as human life as a whole, we come across times when it's extremely challenging. And for me, that was certainly the case these last couple of years, when my husband lost his younger brother, who simply didn't wake up one morning. When our nephew died of a drug overdose. When a loved one was dealing with severe mental health and addiction issues and tried to hurt himself. There are times like this when the positive psychology tools, this idea of shaping ourselves towards the better, it seems like it's just too, the container is too small to hold the immensity of the grief. Do you know what I'm saying? Have you ever had that experience in this human life, no matter how great positive psychology is, that when we hold it in our head to be a personal pursuit, an individual task of climbing the mountain, there are times that doesn't help us, right? So today what I want to do is sort of revamp how we think about well-being, to be less of an individual journey towards well-being, less about an individual selfing, and actually moving past the self into a deep, deep sense of interconnectedness. And in that interconnectedness, we can find a reprieve. Because listen, when I was going through all of this myself in my own life, I feel like in a way I was failing. Like, I know the tools of positive psychology, and yet it felt really heavy and hard. My biggest fear is that I was going to lose another family member. My biggest desire and want was simply to drop the burden of holding it together. And so what I want to introduce to you today is a different type of model for thinking about how we approach well-being, to be less of an individual pursuit and much more of an inclusive, whole, connected way of thinking of well-being. And I guess in a way, I want us to go past this idea of selfing. Very important to grow into oneself, to know who we are, to know our strengths, to know how to lift and elevate ourselves, and to let go of that sense of self into a larger container when life feels too big and painful to hold. And this I want to call unselfing. So this unselfing is our ability to actually look at who we are as bigger than any mental concept we hold in our head. I'm going to begin first by thinking of those places in our lives where we're connected with others in such a way that that connection allows us to see a greater ripple of impact. And I think one of the things, as I was thinking in my head, how do I describe what I mean by unselfing? There are times when terms feel too small. And I think the places we have to go to understand what we mean by unselfing, to think bigger, to actually relax into something greater, is the arts, is nature, is to poetry, is to the divine, the spiritual. These are the places that are bigger than the context of words. And so I came across this poem. I thought, yes, this is what I'm trying to say when it comes to unselving, by connecting with others in a way where something new is created. And this is by Alberto Rios. And it's a poem of When Giving Is All We Have. And it says, you gave me blue and I gave you yellow. Together we are simply green. You gave me that which you did not have, and I gave you that what I had to give. Together we made something greater from the difference. It's poetry. Of course, artistry is in there too. When the self does not feel big enough to hold what life is giving at present, the question becomes, who else is in your life that is next to you that gives you a bigger perspective, something new, something novel. And in biology, they call this place where two ecosystems come together the edge effect. So in art, where you have blue and yellow creating green, in the ocean, for example, you have the blue of the ocean and the yellow of the sand creating the ecosystem of the shoreline. And in that edge effect of the shoreline, there are species that don't exist in either the shore or the water. It's a new place. So the question I have for you as you think about your own life, when you think about the difficulties of COVID, the challenges of just being human when it becomes too big for this sense of self to hold, what new color arises when you're together with someone who brings you a newness, an expanded sense of self? For my own self, that person was Barbara Vickar. Dr. Vickar and I worked together some time ago, but since COVID, she has become an even closer and dearer friend. And we meet and we laugh and we talk and we daydream together. And part of what this ecosystem of the edge effect does, it brings us outside of ourselves into a larger context. And that's what that relationship with Barbara did for me. Without that relationship, I would not be where I am today. I would not have the perspective that I have today. It was because of Barbara that we were able to expand the goodness of the certificate in positive psychology by partnering with Ubiquity University. It was because of Barbara I actually have a brand new role in the Women's Presidents Organization. So not only did she help me sort of work beyond the grief and the borders of self, she actually did so in such a way that something completely unexpected came from it, both in terms of the Women's Presidents Organization that I'm now working in, or with Ubiquity University, certificate in whole being positive psychology that Haniki Bueno is leading. What edge effects are helping you see beyond your sense of self is the first key of unselfing. The question becomes, is there more to it than even others? Is there a bigger water or bigger source to fall back into? For me, this came about when I actually started taking a course at WellBeing Institute. It was a coaching course with Jennifer Hannawald. And the reason I was taking that course is because I'm enrolled in a PhD program and I wanted to work through, okay, what are the goals of this PhD program for myself? And as you probably can well imagine, taking a course for my PhD at a time when life felt so grief-stricken probably wasn't the best idea, right? So I'm in this course. Jennifer asked me if I want to step on. I said, no, I want to continue. And in one of the classes, Jennifer broke us into small groups. And she paired me with Phoebe Atkinson, who was also in our positive psychology coaching and our whole being positive psychology faculty. So I proceeded to break out into that small group with Phoebe. And I wasn't there half a second when I just broke down. I just started sobbing. You see, I couldn't hold myself together anymore. And this is a sure sense that you're doing the selfing thing. If you can't hold yourself together, it's a good time to unself. To fall away from trying to hold it together and to find refuge in nourishment in something larger than oneself. I did drop out of that course. It wasn't the right time. And afterwards, Jennifer called me and she said, Megan, what is working right now for you? Isn't that a great positive psychology question? And I realized when she asked the question, what was working for me was at 4 a.m. in the morning to do my meditation. Not just any meditation, but a type of meditation called non-dual meditation, where you basically unhook from the thinking mind, unhook from big emotions, and allow yourself to drift back into pure awareness, like rest in awareness itself. And when she asked me that question, it dawned on me that this unselfing piece has another component, not just a relational component of the me and the we, but a relational component of the all, of the bigger picture. And this is where our wisdom traditions can really inform us in a wonderful way. The wisdom traditions will tell us there's ways in which we can view divinity, spirituality, a sense of self in Buddhist tradition, emptiness of yoga, the bigger self, the Atman. These are the ways which inform a much bigger container that is so nourishing and so relaxing to be able to fall into. So the question I would have for you is, what are those practices or bigger visions or the divine or the spiritual practices that allow you to have a much bigger container that you can rest in, that's beyond the boundary of self? And that's why I was so thrilled when IPA, the International Positive Psychology Association, actually just recently started a working group to study spirituality. The ways in which we context the bigger self helps us, not by holding it together in a smaller self, but by resting back into something larger. And that's why Barbara and I continue our conversations as we build a master's in whole being happiness, a way that looks at building a positive self, unselfing in a way that helps us see the bigger, and having great social impact in that work. Yeah. So there's more to it than just holding it together, right? And my invitation to you is use this concept of self when it helps the self. This is not bad to have a great, strong sense of self, one that can look at the strengths and nourishing what's good and build upon that. And there are times when that sense of self is too small for what we're feeling in this day. And we can just drop it away. We can learn to open up to one another and not see a boundary of the me and the we, but instead see a relational field that holds the whole. The me, the we, and the all. Take a deep breath in. You see, we are always breathing together, whether we know it or not. I wish you every bit of goodness and a whole lot of peace as we breathe together. Much love. Have a great day.